And then you talk. Summer, 1-7 and 0. That's it. That's all it is. 1-7 and 0. We get 3 and 1-7 and 0. I understand.
I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:16 p.m. Apologize for being a little bit late. We will now take a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll have the coordinator call the roll.
Ms. Jackson? Mr. Rollins?
Here.
Mr. Scrivano?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Here.
Dr. Harner?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Mrs. Powers?
Here.
With 6 present, 1 absent, we have a quorum.
We'll now take a moment to recognize and celebrate outstanding contributions of our students and staff. And Kathy is presenting tonight.
Good evening. Rockford Public Schools were again well represented in recent state competitions, this time for high school journalism. East High School students competed at the IHSA State Journalism Finals at Eastern Illinois University earlier this month. This is the strongest representation East has had at state in journalism, which is really exciting. You may remember Andy Johnson from 2 weeks ago being recognized here. She placed 5th in the state sports writing. The following students will also be recognized tonight for competing at the state level. Rachel Umunga, who was also a sectional champion, Stephanie Nold, Tony Zick, who is also a sectional champion, Susanna Finley, also a sectional champion, and Tess Fontana. Congratulations also goes out to their advisor, Mrs. Brittany Glidden. Congratulations. Thank you.
Your matching shirts. Very good.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Next up, we have 2 Rockford Public Schools teachers who were featured on Channel 13 WREX this month as their Teacher of the Week. Luann Alberts is an Auburn High School dance instructor in the Creative and Performing Arts program. This is her 33rd and final year teaching.
Okay.
So just think of all the students that she's had an impact on. Mrs. Alberts' students say she certainly deserves this recognition, as many of them have gone on to Broadway and the New York City Ballet. The student who nominated her said, "Mrs. Alberts has just always been there for us." 3rd grade teacher Lisa Holliday is in her 4th year teaching in the classroom. This has been a challenging year for her at Nelson Elementary School, but that's made the rewards this year so much greater. WREX said Miss Holliday uses fun games and phrases to get the kids excited to learn. She told the station she couldn't imagine a life without teaching and helping her students. Congratulations goes out to both Mrs. Alberts and Miss Holliday, and thank you for your dedication to Rockford Public Schools and its students.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. We are now at the petitions and communication portion of our meeting when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communications portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for the business of the board and to conduct our meeting in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes. And I think we have 3 speakers tonight. It's not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. 2 names will be called at one time, and the one whose turn it is to speak and the person who will speak next. When you are the second person, please come to the front and sit in the vacant chair. We'll be able to devote the most time to our public comments. We thank you for your interest. We have a clock on the wall to help you with your time for your 2 minutes. And I'm granting special permission tonight to let Jenna Lee and Kristen Weiberg stand together. I think those are the 2 that wanted to speak. Yep. And so Jenna, if you'll come up, and Kristen, if you'll come up now. I'm not sure who's going first. Jenna, are you going first? Okay, all right.
Turn your mic on.
Oh, hit the little red button down there, or there you go.
My name is Kristen Weiberg. I'm a sophomore at Guilford. This year, I'm currently in Guilford's newspaper class. I recently heard about newspaper being cut for next year. This is very disappointing because I was excited for this upcoming year being a news editor and learning more techniques and skills to improve our school paper. I have an outstanding I was excited. I have enjoyed being in Mr. Bingley's class and meeting new students and creating an outstanding paper for the school to see. Being in that class helped me use leadership skills and would be responsible. I even chose the Academy BAMIT for newspaper because I knew that I would continue this class until my senior year. I was also hoping to put this on my college applications and transcripts to improve my chances into getting an acceptable college. I have enjoyed writing stories for the paper and having the accomplishments to have everyone in the school read what I wrote. Having the newspaper cut is stopping a legacy that's going on for 50 years. Students and teachers have been disappointed being disappointed not having the newspaper next year. Our paper has improved so much this year using new tools and ideas for each one. We have had new ideas each year, and I would hate to see them go. The Voyager isn't just for our amusement, it's for everyone at Guilford to see and enjoy. I really hope we can continue our newspaper because we have come so far and we can make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Jenna?
Hi, my name is Jenna Lee, and I am currently a sophomore at Guilford High School. First off, I'd like to thank you for letting us speak together. So we recently heard that our class was going to be cut due to the fact that we only have about 15 kids enrolled next year, and the minimum was 20. So that was sort of upsetting, but we have realized that, we have the new academies that are going to be at Guilford, and we just think that since newspaper is under the BAMIT category, that it encompasses everything that the BAMIT needs. Like, we have 2 different classes coming up next year to Guilford, Intro to Journalism and Intro to Photography, and those are both going to build up our students that we'll be able to have coming into newspaper next year. So if we don't have it this year, it's going to be really hard to bring it back the following year with all the other students that we're having in those Intro to Journalism and Intro to Photography classes. So I think if we are able to keep it around this year, it'll save us from struggling to fight to get it back next year. us as a newspaper class have been funding ourselves. We go out to businesses and ask for ads and ask for money, and we've been doing pretty good at this. We've been very self-sufficient. This year, we only had 15 kids in our class, and we were able to produce 6 pretty amazing papers, and I'm really proud to be a part of that class and being able to put my work out there and be able to see it printed. And, you know, it's something that, it's a class where you're not only learning something, but you're putting your work and you're producing something, and it's just really sad to see that go. So I'd really like to be able to keep that around. So what I'm asking is if we can get another 0.2 of a teacher allocation so that we can keep that class around and keep that Guilford legend around that's been around for 50 years. So
Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it. Okay. Our next speaker is Dr. Clark Wang.
that was Jen.
Thank you. We all know that Illinois is the most corrupt state in government spending. And many taxpayers say Rockford Public School is probably the most corrupt school district in the nation. But I think your lawyer has made it very clear. There's no corruption. Absolutely zero corruption. Everything here is perfectly legal. When the money goes to construction company, we call the superintendent visionary leader for our community. When the money goes to teacher, textbook, science and education, some people say it's wasting the money. You got to admire the facility plan, the wonderful facility plan. I know you don't like a minority, African American, Latino, Asian American like us. You think we stink. You cannot understand what I say. Our kids, when they grow up, become bank robbers, murderers, criminals. I know we don't deserve a penny for education. Thank you so much for abandoning socio-economic depressed neighborhood. The only people who deserve a happy story are the superintendent wife, board member, your good friend, construction company. You all live happily ever after. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are now at the board member comments in the agenda. Are there any board member comments tonight? Mr. Connor?
You have a lot of good things going on. First of all, this Memorial Day, all RPS 205 high school and middle schools except for one marched in the Memorial Day parade. So congratulations to all the band students. Quite an accomplishment. The Auburn High School Quiz Bowl team finished 12th at the Nationals. Congratulations. West Middle School Kappa 6th grade got second place in a science music video and won a microscope. And I happened to see that one on TV. And so, again, great work and congratulations to all the students.
Thank you. Mr. Rollins?
Mr. Connor beat me to the punch, but I was going to say how great it was. When I came on the board in 2011, we were down to 2 middle school bands, and I watched the Memorial Day Parade, and I'll say it a little bit differently. It's not that every middle school band marched. Every middle school in the district had a band marching, and they sounded great, and I thought that was wonderful.
Great, thank you. Any other board member comments? Not, we'll move ahead to the consent portion of our agenda, including the following consent items. Our meeting minutes from May 13th of 2014 and April 26th, 2014, payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, and air travel. The following bid recommendations: the IGA City of Rockford Police Department intergovernmental agreement, the custodial services bid, the paving improvements at multiple locations, the various seal coat projects, the Jefferson High School additions and renovations, and the Guilford High School auditorium renovations, and the following recurring contracts for Allied Benefit Systems, retiree plan administrator, the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois contract renewal for claims administration, the Windstream Communications Corporation recurring contract, and the AT&T ISDN service recurring contract, and other consent items including the monthly financial report, the monthly investment report, interest transfer from working cash, the IASB annual membership, the real estate purchase that was brought by Mr. Schmidt, and the Freedom of Information Act law. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Rollins. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Mr. Connor?
8B.
8B. Ms. Powers?
8A.
Okay. Any others? Ms. Jackson?
10E.
10D? Okay.
E.
E or D?
E.
E, okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the items not pulled.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Well, I'll now take a motion and a second to approve the bid recommendation for the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Rockford Police Department.
So moved.
Mr. Connor makes a motion to approve that.
Second.
Second by Dr. Harner. Discussion and questions. Mrs. Powers.
So this is a really good example, I think, of just needing a little bit more background information. I understand that while it is a bid, we've had an intergovernmental agreement with the Rockford Police Department for several years, and so to get some trend data around how much we have spent with them over the last couple of years. So, Mr. Schmidt, could you just speak to how much we spent 2 years ago, how much this year, and what the increase represents, and whether that the 2 previous years also included the overtime?
Yes, in 2013, we had actual costs of $1,098,038. 2014, we had estimated costs of $1,092,416, and then with what you have in front of you right now tonight, it's estimated cost of $1.1 million for the police services, $1,121,864.
So it's relatively flat. I mean, it's going up slightly, but so the 440 hours of overtime, is that fairly flat to this year and last year?
Yes.
Okay. And then just in terms of site-based management of those resources, do building principals have the ability to determine what level of either police or security staffing they need at what points in time?
Yes. If you want, Fred Deal, our Director of Security Services, is here, and he's the one that oversees the police contract and the security guards, and he works with the buildings on the staffing, and he can answer that for the staffing question.
Mr. Deal.
Yes, typically what we do is we have 3 officers that work the afternoon shift. That's noon to 8 p.m. They cover all extracurricular activities that we need them to. Every month, the principals, through their athletic directors, submit requests to me. We do that by the 10th of the month, and then the calendar is put out usually by the 20th of the month to go ahead and populate whatever extracurricular activities, dances, sporting events, various meetings throughout the district.
And so if I'm a brand-new principal to this district, how am I made aware of the process? I mean, I just have to rely on my athletic director coming to me to say, what do you need for the upcoming months, or how does a new principal learn of this process?
Actually, there's several ways we do it. The first thing is the athletic directors, because they have the most input, because they have the most need. Secondly, every building has a security coordinator. That's another AP who's in charge of facilities. They're also included in that. And then you have the building principals. So every month, 2 or 3 emails go out reminding people that the time is coming to go ahead and submit their request. And then we go ahead and submit a tentative, so they have the opportunity to change it if needed. And then we go ahead and put out a final.
Thank you.
Ms. Jackson.
I do have a question. What types of reports do you get from Is it Officer Spellman who's still over the police officers? in the
Yes, ma'am.
buildings? What types of reports do you get?
We get a variety of reports. Every day I get a report of all the activity in the district as far as arrests go or any special events that are taking place. Once a month I get the statistics based on the arrests at the school and the police interaction. Every building that has a security guard in it, I get a daily report of the activity that the security guards accomplish for the day. And if there's any events of special interest, something that requires more than just a notation, the guards will do a report.
How often do you meet with them?
I meet with Officer Spellman minimum, I'd say twice a week, and the guard force I see almost daily.
Okay, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 8A, the City of Rockford Police Department Agreement.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
I'll now take a motion for the approval of the custodial services bid recommendation, item 8B.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Rollins. Questions or discussions? Mr. Connor.
This is obviously a large contract, and I think to give credit to Mr. Schmidt and particularly Ms. Dennis, who's done a really good job of oversight on this. I think the one item, one of the reasons I pulled it is just to make it a little bit more visible to the public. I know this is was a controversial program at one time. I think the one thing that I would like to suggest, number one, is that there be ongoing reports, and I know that Mr. Schmidt and Ms. Dennis are working on it, where particularly for operations, we get essentially quality reports on a regular basis so that we know and make sure that at the building levels, one of the things I continue to hear about is that there are some buildings where there are some issues. So I think that would be very helpful. This is obviously a lot of money, and I know that adding Ms. Dennis has been a good thing for that management and oversight, but I think, again, that's something that I would like to see scheduled before operations, perhaps once a year, to really go through that in some detail, again, given this kind of size of the contract. The second thing is I noted in here that SMC or Smith Maintenance was considered to be not having the, failed to demonstrate the experience and expertise. And just so I think we can understand, could Mr. Schmidt, can you speak to what specifically they couldn't do because they were the low bid?
Part of the bid recommendation on here is when we evaluate this was not just on price. It was the experience of the company to provide the services that we requested in the bid specifications from the individual maintenance guys, the day porters, the night leads, the pool mechanics to work on the buildings pools. We looked at the financial stability of the company, looked at their references of previous districts, and we went out there and actually Ms. Davis and Mr. Compliance went out there and visited those companies and did some reference checks out there. Based on a whole, we felt that the responses that they put in their bid, they really didn't have the experience needed for the district to move forward with them on a yearly basis to maintain 50 buildings for the custodial services. We looked at a whole bunch of different things. We checked with the individuals where they said they had a contract. We talked with them. They really didn't have the extent of the contract like they stated they did, that they were a subcontractor of another contractor, and they weren't really the main contract for that. They only had a few of the buildings that they said they had. So we just looked at everything as a whole, and we felt with outside legal counsel helping us throughout this whole process, that they were not the lowest responsible bidder for this.
Okay. To clarify, because I know this is something that sometimes causes confusion in the community, by statute we are required to take the low bidder, but they have to be qualified. Is that not correct?
We have to take the lowest responsible bidder.
Yeah, so in layman's terms, you have to be, when you say responsible, that's qualified essentially.
Yes.
So therefore, you checked references, you went out and had questions about their ability to actually deliver this service, and in effect, that's why we did not.
Yes, based on the bid specifications, we had the evaluation criteria of the invitation for bid, and we said price will not be the sole determining factor for this, and we listed the other things that we'll be looking at to award this contract. So based on the evaluation criteria that we put in the specifications is how we determined that GCA was the lowest responsible bidder for this.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll. Oh, Ms. Jackson.
Okay, so Mr. Schmidt, for dollar amount, it has a little over 6.4 million, but looks like the bid was 5.9. What's the difference?
Excuse me, say that again? I just got a little static on that.
For the dollar amount, it says 6.4 million, it's a little over 6.4, but it looks like the award is 5.9.
Where are you seeing 6 points?
Right here.
And the executive summary.
That's
on
what we
board
have
docs.
budgeted in this fiscal year for custodial services. That's the current year budget that we had for that. And then actually we had $6.8 million in the fiscal year 15 budget, and this is going to be coming in quite below that. This is the initial budget when we started this process of what we had in this current year for it.
Okay, so this is a 3-year contract.
It's a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options, so a total potential of 5 years.
Okay, so in FY15, we're paying 5.9, FY16 is 6.3, and FY17 is 6.5.
Correct.
Okay, I'll have the coordinator call the roll then on the approval of the custodial services bid recommendation.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson? Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
I'll now take a motion and a second to approve item 10E, the real estate purchase.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Dr. Harner. Any questions or discussion on item 10E, the real estate purchase? Mr. Connor? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Ms. Jackson?
Yes, is it Mr. Schmidt? Can you speak to this, please? Or can we not? Remind me of what this is.
This is a purchase of some property that we're looking just to the west of East High School for some additional parking, water retention, and with the building addition out there. We're looking at approximately 8 parcels, and this is one of the 8 parcels.
The field house, the facility, no?
It's part of that with the field house, the cafeteria, the classrooms, parking spots. So this is just the property, just on the entrance there on the west side of the building, it's some of those houses. This is one of the properties right there.
Seeing no other further questions, I'll have the coordinator call the roll then on item 10E.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson? Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
We are now at the closed session consent agenda items, including the notice of dismissal and non-renewal of educational support personnel, reduction in force. Item 11B was pulled by administration. The appointment of a 10-month assistant principal, the appointment of a 10-month assistant principal dean, another appointment of a 10-month assistant principal dean, 3 more of them, appointment of a 10-month assistant principal, then an appointment of a 12-month director of human resources, appointment of a 12-month assistant principal of athletic and facilities, appointment of a 12-month dean of curriculum for literacy, appointment of a 12-month Dean of Secondary Language Arts and World Languages, compensation for non-bargaining units, HR organizational report and addendum, and the following closed session consent items for student discipline, in which listed students are prohibited from being on school grounds and school-sponsored activities without the prior written permission of the principal, and the suspensions are affirmed. The following students are expelled for the remainder of the 2013-14 school year and the first semester of next year, the 2014-15 school year. Those are students TB2 and DP3. The following students are expelled for the remainder of the 2013-14 school year and the entire 2014-15 school year, BAB4 and BAB5. The following students are expelled for the remainder of the 2013-14 school year and the first semester of the 2014-15 school year, and the recommended expulsion for the second semester of the 2014-15-16 school year is held in abeyance, contingent upon a conditional probationary agreement. Those are students DJI 20 and JTM 21. The 5-day suspension appeal is granted for the following student, OFC 22. The expulsion for the following student is held in abeyance, contingent upon a conditional probationary agreement for the rest of this school year and all of next school year. That's student CJC 24. And the 10-day suspensions are upheld for the following students, and the expulsions are held in abeyance through the first trimester of the 2014-15 year, contingent upon a conditional probationary agreement, JJC 23 and DSH 25. And these following students have been granted a conditional probationary agreement, DSB 6, ERS 7, RS 8, SMR 10, MSB 11, SLA 12, TJM 13, OTR 14, ELM 16, DH 17, TGB 18, and NCJ 19. Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Are there any items that board members would like to have pulled for separate consideration? Mrs. McCullough.
I'm going to pull A through L, but I'm going to pull it because traditionally we have listed not just the title, but the name of the person being hired. Are we changing that now? Because I'd like it read into the record.
The resumes are attached and visible to the public.
But tonight when we vote on a name, and we in the past have listed the names of who and where they're going. It wasn't just a 10-month assistant principal. We would say, and this is just my memory, and maybe we changed it the last couple times and I missed it, but we would say a 10-month so-and-so as the 10-month dean at Jefferson or something like that. And mostly because we had some HR questions today, I really would just like it in the record.
Okay.
And that way, if we go back and look, it's there.
Okay.
They are, if I could just add, in the public content background analysis, it does contain the name and location as to where they'll be as well.
Okay. Ms. Jackson, did you have your light on? Yeah.
I was going to pull them off 11 for a different reason, but I do recall them being read into the record where they're going, so.
So you'd like A through N then pulled under 11, correct?
Yes, and then all of 12.
All of 12, okay. Ms. Powers, did you have anything you want? Okay. So I guess because those were all items have been pulled, I'll take a motion, I guess, then to approve items 11A through N.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Or second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. No discussion, right? What's that? We need a roll call now for items A through N. We don't have discussion on those? Right, okay. Ms. Powers, did you have a question?
We can have general, not necessarily discussion, but I can make a comment before we call the vote, right?
I don't know the answer to that. It can't be specific to an individual. It has to be related to procedure.
Thank you. And from a process standpoint, and it's exactly process, it has nothing to do with the individuals. Right. I'm not going to support the recommendations because There was not ample time for me to review any of the documentation supporting administration's recommendations. The documents were given to us just as we left closed session. When we are talking about people's pay, I would like more time to consider that, and so I cannot support specifically item M, the compensation for non-bargaining. But I will also be voting no to all of them because we did not have ample discussion on them.
Ms. McCullough?
So my ask to have them read in terms of their name and their job, is that not going to happen then? When are you going to do that, so that we are voting on the names that you give us? I realize it's in the record, but it's invisible to the public, so this is, you can't even get it on the website. Hmm?
Gerald Erdman as an assistant principal, and his initial placement will be at Lincoln Middle School.
Okay. All right.
So that would be a clarification.
So I guess we'll clarify then to the motion that we're going to put those names in there. So the
first one, though, is the notice of dismissal.
Right.
Two aren't,
Right,
because the second one was full.
right, so,
This is three teachers.
right, okay.
B through L, or, I'm sorry, C through L.
I don't know how to do this
So do
other,
it one by each motion. So the first one will be A, that you need a motion. You've already got your motion
All right.
to approve A,
okay.
right?
Well, actually, I think it was A through N. Yeah.
Let's get a motion to amend it only for A.
All right, so I guess I'm going to take now a motion to amend it for just item A.
To
For
clarify,
11A.
so point of order, you want a motion just for the approval of A? Is
Just
that
for
correct?
11A.
To amend your original motion, which was to approve.
So amended.
All right. Is there a
Or
second?
just A?
Second on that amended motion?
So then you vote on the
Second.
amendment, then you vote
Second.
on the
Okay.
motion.
Now I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the amendment for 11A.
Mrs. Powers,
What specifically is the amendment?
It's about, it's,
So we're just voting on the dismissal.
that we're just going to do,
Thought we were voting on an amendment, and then we're
Right.
actually going to vote on the
the
issue.
amendment
So
is to
what is the
only-
amendment?
Is to only vote on item 11A.
Thank you. Yes, I will support
Okay.
that.
All right, okay.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano,
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough,
Yes.
Dr. Harner,
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Now I need
No, you already have
a roll call on the amended motion, which is for 11A, dismissal and notice of dismissal and non-renewal of educational support personnel.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mrs. Powers,
Yes.
Ms. Jackson,
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
So now we're going to do 11C individually. All right, I need a motion then to approve item 11C.
So moved. Second.
And a second by Doctor, and that is for the appointment of Gerald S. Erdman to the position at Lincoln Middle School as Assistant Principal Dean, correct? Okay. I have the coordinator call the roll then on item 11C.
Ms. Jackson?
Can you clarify, did you say assistant principal / dean for 11C? It
Yes,
says assistant principal.
it's just assistant? Okay. Correction. It is, you're right, Ms. Jackson, it's assistant principal.
No.
10C? No, it's
Point of order.
I don't have a list, you'd have to go through.
Yeah, I don't have a list. I don't know how else to do it. All right, would you like me to do that? What's the wishes of the board?
Well, you're in the middle of a vote.
All right, well, let's finish this, we'll finish this vote. This is for Gerald Erdman at Lincoln Middle School Assistant Principal. So we had, go ahead, coordinator, and finish the roll call on that one.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
No.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 noes.
All right. All right, I'm going to read the names and the placement as a group for the remainder ones. The next one is 10-month assistant principal and dean, and that is for West Middle School, Vicki Gartner.
It's actually, all of them are just APs.
Okay, are all just APs? But it says the AP and dean right there. All right.
No, I don't know.
The next one is for West Middle School, it's Billy Cook. And the next one is Romel Bryant for Kennedy.
Sean Norton is the next one.
Sean Norton, and that is for Auburn. Didn't go.
H is Deborah Novi for H.
Oops, I don't know why H didn't come up here. Let me try
H
it
is
again.
Kennedy Middle School, Deborah Novi.
Deborah Noby for Kennedy Middle School. And then I is,
Katie Vieira, HR director.
say that again?
Katie Vieira.
Kathleen Vieira.
Katie Varero,
Vieira.
and that's for HR. And then the 12-month assistant principal of athletics is Deanna Pino at Auburn High School. And 12-month dean of curriculum for literacy,
Sydney Graves.
Sydney Graves. And then the dean of secondary, 12-month dean of secondary language arts and world languages.
Carrie Neri.
Carrie Neri. And I think that's it then. Okay.
So can you have a motion?
So I'll take a motion to approve items 11D through L.
So moved.
C
Moved by
through
Mr.
L.
Connor.
Oh, we already did C.
Yeah.
Second.
Second. Have the coordinator call the roll. Sorry.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
No.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 noes.
All right, I'll take a motion now for the approval of the compensation for non-bargaining units.
So,
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Mr. Rollins. Have the coordinator call the roll on item 11M.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
yes.
Mrs. Powers?
No.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 noes.
I'll now take a motion for the approval of item 11N, which is the HR organizational report and addendum.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Dr. Harner. Have the coordinator call the roll.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Nope.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
I'll now take a motion to approve all of the student discipline consent items.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Second by Ms. McCullough. Have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of items 12 and 13.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson? Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
Thank you, I think. Dr. Jarrett, you may give the superintendent report. Thank you.
Well, once again, I'd like to focus on updating the community on the facilities plan. We've conducted a total of 39 meetings over the last 3 weeks, and we are taking a little breather to do some really, spent a lot of time with graduations this week. We have a total of 6 this week, and that's really exciting to see. But I do want to update everyone on the status of those meetings. We had 39 community meetings, nearly 1,000 attendees, nearly 500 forms have been filled out, so it's been very robust in terms of community turnout and interest in the process. And we're excited now as the facility task force to get back together and compile all that information and come up with a very strong recommendation to the board that I think will reflect some of the input we've received from the community. The board can anticipate this coming forward June 24th and July 8th is, I think, what we're hoping to accomplish. Does not look like we'll have it ready by June 10th. There's a lot of information to work through, but I am real appreciative of the support from the board and the facilities task force, community members, as well as our staff to get out there and meet people where they are. The meetings were particularly well attended when we had them in actual elementary schools during the day. So that was exciting to see. We had some meetings that had over 100 people. So it was very worthwhile, and I think we will have a stronger facilities plan because of the level of community engagement. So we thank everyone for turning out for those meetings, and we're looking forward to a very strong plan being brought forth to the board that really helps ensure all students are in an improved learning environment, and I think there are some good things to come.
Ms. McCullough, you may proceed with the Education Committee report.
Education Committee has not met since our last meeting, although there are a couple of new agenda items from that meeting, specifically the textbooks adoptions, which I would say to the board all were well vetted and came through the committee with a recommendation to move forward. Our meeting that is scheduled for June 2nd, which is next Monday, in this room at 5:30, has 4 agenda items. All are updates. None of them are actually action items that will come to the board, but the updates will be on the following areas: empowerment zones, the high school academies, the school improvement planning, and virtual learning. That ends my report.
Thank you. Mr. Rollins, the Operations Committee report.
The Operations Committee also has not met since the last board meeting. We will be meeting here in this room next on Tuesday, June 3rd at 5:30 p.m.
All right, we're now on to the action items, and our first action item tonight is the K-12 Insight. Is there a motion program? This is the program that was presented by Mr. Contreras and Dan Weisman. Is there a motion and a second to approve the K-12 Insight program?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Dr. Harner. Are there any questions or discussions on item 16A? Ms. Powers.
I just wanted to make a comment as to, I really felt conflicted about this, and while we have as a board, have asked administration to become more customer-centric and more of servant leadership, I'm struggling because it feels like a lot of times the answer is money, 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 and I haven't seen anything to demonstrate that we can go from a bike with training wheels all the way up to, a motorcycle. I feel like administration wants to go right to the motorcycle without any sort of in-between. So both this one and the SMART training were the SMART program that's coming up later. And so while I will support SMART, I'm not going to support K-12. I haven't seen anything that shows me that they can do some intermediate solutions rather than jumping right to the monetary. So I'm not going to support it.
Any other questions or discussion? Mr. Connor.
Mrs. Powers is bringing up some good points, and I understand. I think the reason that I'm going to support it is that the number one thing that I see that we don't do today is we don't record our feedback in a database and have it over a long period of time. I think there's a lot of staff time that's taken with these activities, and with all due respect to the administration, I think it's relatively uncoordinated today. I think my answer would be that there needs to be more thought put into process, and I think there has been some good thought, but I think that having that feedback and exactly how it would be applied over time, because the answers in here are good and make sense as a direction, but I do think, listening to this discussion now for a couple of months, that there have been a number of questions raised both at the committee level and at the board level, that as much as I'm in favor of this idea and will vote yes, I think it would be a good idea to show exactly what the process would look like and come back to us on how this is going to be used in the actual process side. But I think from the software side, it's a good solution and will allow us to go forward and build our data over time. And the other thing is, I think we'll be more transparent and be able to support the superintendent's metrics through the use of the K-12.
Any other comments? Mr. Rollins.
Talk without squealing. Yeah, I'm also kind of conflicted because it hasn't been really clear in any of the presentations that I've attended how this would actually work. I think it's an important issue. I agree with Mr. Connor. I will support it. But I guess I would really ask that the administration come back to us at some point in the future and tell us exactly how you've implemented it, how it's working, because we are kind of taking a leap of faith here based on the presentations I've sat through about exactly how this is going to work. And this is going to be an annual cost to the district. So, you know, if it doesn't work, if it's not working the way that too many times we do these things and nobody really thinks about it after the fact. If it's not working the way it's supposed to, then we ought to just pull the plug and find something better.
Ms. McCullough.
Well, and I'm going to support it for the reason that we have made one of the superintendent's goals this area of better customer service. And so if this is his recommendation as to how he'd like to achieve his goal, I too would like to give it an opportunity, but agree that we need some response and feedback, and I expect we will get that since he has to report on his goals. So hopefully that'll close the loop.
Okay, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 16A, the K-12 Insight Program for Customer Service.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mrs. Powers.
No.
Ms. Jackson.
No.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough.
Yes.
Dr. Harner.
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 nos.
Okay, thank you. Our second item is Board Policy 8.20, Community Relations, Community Use of School Facilities. See if I read this right. Is there a motion and a second to approve the waiver of Board Policy 8.20, Community Relations, Community Use of Schools for the Park District?
Yes, through December 31st.
Okay, through December 31st. Okay. 2014. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Rollins, second by Mr. Connor. Are there any questions or discussions on this one? This is item 16B. If not, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll.
Mrs. Powers.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
No.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
Okay, the next item is 16C, which is $703,595.20, IEMA grant acceptance. That was presented by Dr. Wolf. Is there a motion to approve this grant?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Dr. Harner. Are there any questions or discussion? Ms. Jackson?
Is Mr. Wolf here, Dr. Wolf? That's okay.
All right. I'll then have the coordinator call the roll on item 16.
Would you like us to text him?
No, see, okay.
What's the phone number?
Okay, okay.
Mrs. Bradley.
I'm pretty good, so.
You have, Ms. Jackson, do you have a question that you would like to ask?
Mrs. Bradley is available if you.
No?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the IEMA grant acceptance.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Our final action item tonight is the Smart Learning System that has been presented by Mr. Hickman and Ms. Bradley. Is there a motion and a second to approve the Smart Learning System?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Questions or discussion? Ms. Powers?
Again, I just would like to reiterate that this one's got a much higher price tag than the other one. I will support this one because this one is support for teachers and students, and again, I expect the same level of accountability for administration to let us know how it's working or not working, and to have the integrity to admit if it's not working and what needs to be done to refine it and tweak it, if that is the case. So I will support it with reservation.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
So I do have a couple of questions. First, I want to thank Mr. Hickman for sending me some information that I had the opportunity to look over briefly. So I'm trying to understand, because part of what we do is write school improvement plans. So is there something wrong with the process that we currently use, why we have to go to this approach? Can you explain that?
I wouldn't say that there's something wrong with our approach, but there's a more inclusive and more effective approach, and that's the one that we're going to implement through SMART systems. And so at the end, it goes back to the idea of, rather than a principal or just a team of people leading school improvement, that it's our entire school down to the teacher-student level engaging in school improvement.
So I looked at this and I tried to find a breakdown of the price. And I actually went on her website, because this is an individual, well, it's a company, but there's an individual that owns this company, right? And her name is Ann from something, I can't recall her last name. So they actually offer academies for the SMART system. So are we doing something that's, I guess, individualized? Are we creating this? Why not do the academy trainings that they offer?
So in the state of Illinois this past year, there was one academy offered to the entire state, and there were about 30 participants. And it was not individualized. It didn't include the readiness training. I think you accurately said it. It wasn't individualized or tailored to what our needs were. And some of our needs are developing the SMART measurement systems. So how do we align ourselves with the superintendent's goals? It doesn't include that degree of specificity in the general academy.
Walk me through what this will look like. So the group of consultants will come in, right, and then walk me through that process.
So in phase one of training, which will begin this summer, should this be approved, we will bring in a teacher leader and a principal, and we will do leader readiness training. And so as part of that training, we will prepare the team on what training is going to occur. We will establish a SMART measurement system, so as our teachers receive or
our teams of people, our school improvement team, as they receive the Smart Coach training in Phase 1, they understand the metrics that we're going to use to measure that. Then in Phase 1, we train 16 of our schools, and as part of that, we have certified Smart Coaches, which then can train other people. And then in Phase 2, we will train another 16 schools. I think one thing that Ms. Powers clearly identified is we want to be assessing this as we go along, and so that we limited the scope of contract so that we could have time to evaluate its effectiveness and determine if there's any adjustments or changes that need to be made. And I think that's important for us as the board engages in a new strategic planning process.
And I thank you for that. And while I understand, I have a real problem with the price tag of $700,000. I mean, because we went from, I know that we can get assistance with school improvement plans, which I believe doesn't cost us money. We went from having Fiery Mind come in, I believe, for a couple of years to help write school improvement plans, and it wasn't that expensive. So to jump from that to this price is something that I'm just having a real problem with, but I do thank you for sending me the information.
I have the coordinator call the, Mr. Connor, do you have a question?
Yeah, just very quickly, if I understood, this money is not additional spend. This is really essentially cost neutral, if you will. It's essentially reallocating the development dollars. Is that correct?
Mr. Connor, you are correct that we currently do engage in professional development activities. We're asking our schools and our buildings to align some of those funds to Smart Systems training.
Okay. The one comment I have is something I said, I believe, before, but I'd really like it as part of the record. I think it's very important that the number one way for us to take advantage of spending this money is to make sure that we commit to the results of the outcome of the SMART. And I think from my own experience and from the teachers, paras, and others I've talked to, it's always been how these tie together and the commitment to the action items that are brought. So from my point of view, this is the process side, which is really good and it's well thought through, but it's that commitment to the actual implementation that comes out of them that I'd like to make sure that that's something that we get as follow-up.
Okay, thank you. The coordinator call the roll on the approval of 16D, which is the Smart Learning System.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson? The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
Thank you. We are now on to new and other business, and our first item is to be presented by Dr. Jernigan on the middle school science textbook adoption. Thank you for being here. Turn your mic on and speak loudly.
Can you all hear me?
Little closer. Okay, all right, thank you.
How's that?
Better.
Better? Okay. According to our textbook adoption cycle, middle school science was up for new textbooks. So our search for these new textbooks began in October of last year. The first thing we did was we had a vendor fair and invited vendors to come and show their wares and talk to students. We had 6 vendors at that meeting. The next thing, during those meetings, we had surveys that teachers filled out, which helped us narrow to 4 vendors. And teachers gave up 4 evenings to come hear 2-hour presentations from each of the 4 vendors. From those presentations, teachers chose 2 textbooks to field test. They decided on the Pearson Interactive Series and the It's About Time Problem-Based Inquiry Series. Those teachers became the Textbook Adoption Committee. 14 of 63 teachers, or 22% of the middle school science teachers, served on that committee. After a 2-month-long field test, students and teachers completed surveys on their experiences. The data was compiled and the Textbook Adoption Committee met again. and reviewed the data. The committee decided on the problem-based inquiry series from It's About Time for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes, the McGraw-Hill text for the 7th grade gifted science at Marshall, and the Pearson Project STEM as resource books for the middle school science elective classes. The total purchase price for all the student texts, teacher texts, ancillary materials, and kits is $766,801, which is $80,000 less than my presentation to the Ed Committee. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, thank you.
Mr. Connor.
I have several. One is that when we've had textbook presentations in the past, one of the aspects that I think I'd like to make sure that has been both discussed with the teachers as well as a part of your thinking going forward is how much is software a part of this and how much of this is around physical text as opposed to things that we can have essentially updated electronically without having to physically change out textbooks periodically.
Right. The 6th, 7th, and 8th grade texts are problem-based inquiry. Those texts are not your traditional texts. They lead students to learn the scientific literacy, scientific processing skills that they need. I see it as a step in the evolution of science teaching, which will include technology, engineering, and math, or the STEM process. This textbook series is not heavily does not have a lot of software to it. We have online text access, and we have some other programs that go along with it. For instance, in the ever-changing Earth, the Google Earth is a part of that inquiry unit. That's it.
Maybe in a related question, so if we have things like labs, rather than always having physical, I mean, for things like physics and geology and some of those topics, those tend to be a little bit more complex. Are there any materials that the students that are interested in science in particular can go out and take advantage of some of those? And how does it relate to, say, regular labs that would be given through the middle school science?
So your question is, will students, is there a follow-up to outside
It's really
of school?
two-part. It's
Yes.
really around the labs. So are there essentially online labs if you wanted to show, geology over time? Clearly, that's something that's hard to do in the classroom. There's other things that are hard to do, especially around physics, especially as particle physics changes, those kinds of topics. I'm just wondering that as we do that, are there labs available for students that want that? And that in general, if you have labs, do we take advantage of any of those kind of techniques where the students can see related things that they don't have to have physically right there in front of them in the classroom?
Yes. We have resources, the governmental resources such as USGS, NOAA, NASA, and all of those provide online labs or activities for students to do, and those are always available for students and supplemented, and notice is given to the students that those are there for enhancement of the lessons.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. McCullough?
I would make note that the committee did ask if this was in the budget. It is. It's under the textbook budget. Also, congratulations, because I know that it's $80,000 less because of your hard work, so thank you for that.
Okay. This will be presented at our June 10th board meeting for a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our second item tonight is the high school social studies textbook adoption, and this will be presented by Mr. Corey Nilsson.
Good evening. We began the high school socialized textbook adoption process in November. We began with a vendor fair similar to what Dr. Jernigan used. We invited 6 vendors to come in and show off their materials to the teachers. We have approximately 60 teachers at the high school level, and of those 60 teachers, 30 showed up to participate in that. From that population of teachers who showed up at the textbook fair, we used survey results to narrow it down to 3 vendors to come back and make individual presentations. Those individual presentations were conducted January through March at various times, both here at the district level and in the high schools, where teachers had a chance to both use and take the books back to their classrooms to not really pilot, but to see how well they would be effective in the teaching process. The final step of our process was to ask teachers what recommendations they would make for the 16 of the 21 classes at the high school level we're looking to adopt for. Throughout that process, we got a result now of a total cost expenditure of $822,009, sorry. That is approximately $150,000 less than it was at the Education Committee meeting 3 weeks ago. Are there any questions on how our process unfolded and how these will affect the teachers and students?
Ms. McCullough.
I would be remiss if I did not thank you for your hard work as well as getting that.
Great. Okay. Mr. Connor.
Similar questions to the science in terms of the viability of the materials over time, and how much does the electronic part fit into this?
That's an excellent question. We made sure that was part of our surveys at every level as well. Okay. And for the 3 of the 5 required courses at the high school level, world history and world geography and economics, they have chosen a text from a publisher called TCI. They do a lot of online simulation and gameplay that can be used in class to not only show how history unfolded, but actually make the students participants in that kind of process. One of the examples I like to use is a teacher talked to me about how they did the imperialism unit in world history as part of their trial basis. So what they did is they turned their classroom, the desk, the lamps, the chairs, everything, into an area of land. And the students, as part of their activity, took a Post-it note and claimed it for their various countries, if you will. And what happened is the first group went up and claimed the smartboard. Well, the second group went up and claimed the projector and said, good luck using your smartboard. These students now had a good example of how imperialism kind of unfolded with the countries. These are all ideas that have activities that are linked to online portions as well. The other 2 courses that require U.S. history and American government do have online components. They're not quite as simulation or game-based, but they have text available along with videos and note-taking applications. So they do all have a text and online component, and even one of the AP titles we're recommending has an online component as well.
Okay. And out of curiosity, are there advanced materials, I assume also, that if people want to do extra projects or things tailored, that these materials that you just mentioned would make that easier for teachers to use to have the extra assignments, those sorts of things?
Yes, all the titles have the ability to do that. The TCI ones are especially good at that because they focus around not just the content, but kind of a constructivist methodology for learning and acquiring the content. So students are able to kind of branch off, and teachers can guide them in different ways depending upon that class's interest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nilsson. This will also be presented then at our June 10th for a board vote. Thank you. Our third item tonight is the College Board Consulting Agreement. I don't see Michelle, is here? Michelle Beach is supposed to be doing that one. You don't look like Michelle. Okay.
No,
Mr. Hickman. Okay.
Michelle couldn't be here this evening, or Ms. Beach could not be here this evening. And so what this is the continued training of AP teachers. It's part of our advanced placement training that we do with staff, and we are also expanding our AP course offerings. And what this does is this allows for 6 through 12 articulation of teachers that would teach advanced placement or possibly teach students that may enter advanced placement. So this is a common training across school districts in the state of Illinois, and for, I really should say, around the nation for any staff that teaches advanced placement courses.
Ms. Powers.
if you're able to answer, I mean, so when you say 6 through 12, is it all middle schools are eligible or just Washington, or
All middle
Marshall.
schools are eligible to participate in this training. I know Ms. Beach, and she reached out to a number of staff, which staff have signed up for the training. That part I'm not specific, that's why I was back there, was seeing if we had that list yet. No, teachers are still responding.
Okay. And then how does it work in terms of, because the way she kind of laid it out in terms of year one was the pre-grant partnership, year two, and then where you're going with this year. If I'm a teacher new to the district, how do I get kind of caught up on where we've been in order to be able to participate in where we're going?
Well, one of the things that we are trying to do is not to use new teachers to teach AP. It's not that we're saying, no, you can't if you're a new teacher, but at the end, we would like for you to have some instructional experience before you teach our most advanced students. But sometimes we do have new teachers that are ready. And so I think when I talked to Mrs. Beach about that, that's part of, if you're identified as an AP teacher, that's part of the training and conversations that she has in-house or in-district, part of that in-district training.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Mr. Hickman? This will also be presented at our June 10th meeting for a vote. Mrs. Fisher, you're next. Mary, okay. This is the Crusader Community Health Site License Agreement.
You have before you the proposed site license agreement for the Crusader Community Health Auburn campus, a school-based health center. And we believe that it reflects comprehensive health care for our district students, medical, dental, vision, nutrition, and a variety of health care education for our students. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mary?
The walls are going up, you know.
What's that?
The walls are going up.
The walls are going up, that's right. Mrs. McCulloch?
Well, and we have there's a group going through on the 29th. It's to see the construction and and what's happening there. Was it at 2 p.m.?
Yes, 3 I think it is.
3 p.m. I apologize. And
It's a media day for the field house as well as the school health center.
Right, so that's pretty exciting as well. And I just want to say that I've been on the committee that has been working through a lot of the issues and what we're bringing forward, and they have been so well organized, so well, a lot of research, went out and did a lot of polling, talking, and so I'm just appreciative for all the work that went into getting to this point.
Thank you.
This will be presented. Ms. Powers, you had a question?
Do we have the list, or when it talks under behavioral health services, provide direct referrals to services that include specific providers? Do we have the list of providers that we would do the direct referrals to?
That would be Rosecrans.
And only Rosecrans? There isn't anybody else?
I'm sorry. Crusader Community Health is contracting with Rosecrans. If it would be something that they couldn't handle, then they would refer out.
There isn't anybody else that they work with besides Rosecrans? There's nobody else?
At this point, Rosecrans has quite a presence in our district, so it'd probably be quite a logical choice.
Would it be safe to say, may I ask?
Go ahead, Ms. McCullough.
Sorry. Thank you for recognizing me. I would say that all the providers on here are taking the leap, coming on board to try to support a school-based health center, but those are the ones that are going to be working directly with the students. If it's a referral, it can be, a family can be referred to, if they have another psychologist or whatever are we limited? They're not limited though, right? A referral is a referral. That doesn't mean it's being covered?
A different agency would not be on site, correct? It would be Rosecrans on site.
That's my point. I didn't get there very well, but the fact that we have referrals means we have providers that would be on site so that they don't have to have transportation and the like, but if a family would prefer to use a different provider that is not limiting that, you can have a physician's referral to go to a different site. Is that
And
correct?
I guess that's my question, is whether I am asking for services immediately or 3 weeks from now, what am I, as either the student or the family of the student, what information am I given? Is there a menu? Is there, we've got other providers in Mildred Berry Center, there's other people, other services in this community, private counselors, that I would like the opportunity for parents to choose and to have that list available to them instead of it's Rosecrans or nothing else.
Well, I can certainly talk with Crusader about that. It's my understanding that if a family has their own provider, we would certainly encourage them to continue to go to that provider. This would simply be on location.
Okay. Mildred Berry is Rosecrans.
Is Rosecrans, right?
Okay, Ms. McCullough.
And again, these providers are willing to be on site, and that was the important part for this, since it's a school-based health clinic. We couldn't have, or the recommendation, or who Crusader worked with, we couldn't have had, 5 providers there because, for lack of a better word, there wouldn't have been the business and the space
It has to be
and the
sustainable.
opportunity. So for on-site, just the same way we have optical and we have dental and we have one optician and we have, although he's in a group practice now, and we have one dentist, right? And so that is just the way that this model is set up, and that's what's in the contract for the on-site services, directly on-site.
Okay, Ms. Powers?
Well, I guess I would use childcare as an example. Many of our schools have after-school childcare, or the Y provides supervision so that the child can stay after school, and the Y does that, and it's on-site. When we went to zones, our transportation department also provided a list of daycares that are within the zone to give the parents a choice of where they could go. That's all I'm looking for. If Rosecrans is on site, that's fine, but are there lists or any sorts of materials or references for parents to consult beyond the on-site source? We do it for childcare and transportation from the transportation department. I guess I would just like to see that the parent knows they have choices.
And I'll talk with Crusader about that.
Okay. I would just say the only comment to that, the mental health reimbursement to those providers is very complicated, and Rosecrans, based upon its designation of the state, has abilities to collect monies that individual providers in the communities may not have, depending upon each individual's insurance. So it's very dependent upon each patient and or family's insurance as to what a provider, just a general provider, is going to get paid for the service that they provide to that particular patient. If it's very complicated and very, mental health is not well served in general in the community. But it's limited because of the law and the way the insurance and the way the state credentials mental health providers. I deal with it every day in my workplace. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. This will also be presented at our June 10th board meeting for a vote. Mr. Schmidt will do these as a group. These are all life safety amendments for Flynn, West, Washington, Lincoln, and Kennedy. I think it all relates to windows, doesn't it?
All 5 of these are for window replacements that include everything in the life safety amendment is the removal, the replacement, any potential masonry work, A&E services, and contingency. This is the first step of the process to have the Board of Education approve the life safety amendments. Once the board approves this, we move this on to the regional office. Once they approve it, it goes down to the state level. Once they approve it, then we have an actual certificate of a life safety amendment, then we can potentially, where we're looking at February and 15 to sell another life safety bond. So these are the first proceeds for that.
When would this work be done?
Most of this will be done next year. We're going to start do some designs on the east and Lincoln. West and Lincoln, thank you. That's fine. Since we already did east.
Yeah.
We're going to look at doing a mock-up of those hopefully and have one of those done this fall potentially, so we can see if there's any problems with them, since those are the other two buildings that are historic. So most of this work will be done next year. Some of it's going to start the summer of 15 and then follow up through 16 and be done. These are some larger projects for this. So by the end of 2016, all 5 of these should be done.
Mr. Scrivano.
Yes. I was just going to make a comment. I thought it was interesting that some of those windows were originally put in the 1920s.
Yes.
They've been there for a while. Ms. McCulloch, go ahead.
So these life safety bonds that you're going out for, these aren't part of the group that we're talking about as part of this facilities task force and the whole $250 million?
Yes.
It is?
Yes. Yep, through
Just
either the
making sure.
Yes, through the life safety bond and through the nickel. This is just life safety that we have there. These are things that we did have allocated in the current spending plan that we have.
Okay, so this is part of what we're currently talking about is $11 million in life safety bonds as part of our revenues, okay.
Mr. Connor?
Are there any limitations to the scope of the windows? So, for example, I know that at places like Lincoln West and East, I mean, they have a lot of old windows, and I'm thinking particularly the windows, say, in Lincoln's gym that are specialty and so forth. So these will cover literally every single window throughout the buildings. All right, so there won't be any
other than I take
exclusions?
it maybe like a couple windows in the boiler room or something like that.
Yeah,
we won't replace those, but
But all the general windows, okay, they're all, and if we do it under life safety bonds, there's no limitations or anything that goes with that?
No, the only limitations is if the State Board of Education does not approve this amendment, or they make us modify it or change it. Even though that the board is approving this, it's not a done deal until the state approves it and says, yes, we can use life safety funds for this type of project.
Is there criteria that we have to meet or be prepared to answer for us to be approved by the state?
Which we have that in there, yes. Through the architect that went in there and did the survey on there, this does meet some of the criteria, because a lot of the criteria for the health life safety bonds is the structural integrity of the building with masonry, tuck pointing, window replacements, roof replacements, and potentially any fire hazards or asbestos and boiler replacements, things like that.
And out of curiosity, on the historical aspect of any of the buildings, are there typically any hang-ups on that?
There's always hang-ups on historical renovations that you have to get approved by the Historical Society, and that may increase the cost just a little bit, and that's why we have that cushioned in here for those replacements.
Okay, thank you.
Just to let you know, also, the Auburn and Guilford windows were approved for the life safety amendment through the State Board of Education, so there's no reason to think that these would not be.
Okay. This will also come up for a vote on our June 10th meeting. Are there any business items or agenda recommendations from board members? Ms. Powers?
Just was wondering what the intent is or the follow-up from the special board meeting. Seemed there was a lot of discussion, but there weren't any motions or anything regarding committee structure, board reporting, code of conduct packages, so what can we expect? What's next?
I can make a suggestion
Go ahead.
from our point of view.
Sure.
Mrs. Powers, from the administration's point of view, one step we can take is to start to review the 5-year strategic planning process and let some of that discussion flow, whether it's committee structure or report schedule, and some of the different topics, I hope will flow through that 5-year process with CEC. The REA has partnered with us on that as well.
I know one of the things Ms. Hoadley and I were going to meet to try to tweak the wordage in the student code of conduct guidelines that we were going to, for the discipline review of those cases, Mrs. Hoadley and I were going to meet and make some changes that we discussed about. I think the discussion we had on governance and things, I think that's a work in progress that will continue at our future quarterly meetings, and Danette and I will plan on addressing, our progress towards that. What's that? I'm not sure. No, actually, I was going to mention this since our REA leadership is here. Our next quarterly Saturday retreat meeting, in case you don't have anything to do on a Saturday in August, is Saturday, August 16th, from 8:30 to 12:30. So that's our next meeting. So, Ms. McCulloch, I didn't understand your question.
Well, I asked if part of this would be addressed at our next quarterly retreat, but August seems, we had a conversation in May, so the beginning of May, about the items that Ms. Powers has mentioned, so to come to some sort of decision. We won't be that far along in strategic planning to know what we're going to do with our committees, right?
So for me, in the absence of a formal motion or agreement, consensus, then we can expect that the committee structure will not change until further notice, or that the board reporting will stay through the end of June, and then, nobody has decided anything,
Right.
and
No, I don't think,
the past.
in my opinion, I would say we're not going to change any committee structure because we haven't come to a conclusion or decision yet on whether or not we want to do that or not.
But the code of conduct, Pat, the information we receive for student disciplines is water under the bridge. That's not going to change?
No. Ms. Hoadley and I are going to meet.
I know, those
Okay.
just the guidelines, but I'm talking about the content.
Oh, okay. I don't know the answer. I'm not sure. You mean that the slimming down of the packet, is that what you're referring to?
Right. Well, and like I said, getting the key as to what the numeric values on a elementary school report card, some change wasn't asked for and it was put in, and some change is asked for and it's not there. So help me understand where we stand with the discipline cases.
I don't know that I have an answer for you on that today. So we will discuss that with Mrs. Carter then. Okay? Ms. McCulloch?
I have a question.
I'm
Who
sorry.
is the "we"? You said we will discuss this with Ms. Hyde Carter. Who is the "we"?
The board.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think that's a group decision.
Okay, so when, are we talking at the next strategic quarterly meeting that you said in August, or are we talking about before August? Well, I guess, sometime before. So we're talking about in
Yeah,
August, because the school year is almost over, so.
Right,
Okay.
that was our plan, yeah.
So that will be on the agenda?
On the agenda, yeah. We haven't built that agenda yet, but I've got some things in my mind that I know we're going to talk about, and strategic planning and governance, and those things are all going to be included on that agenda. Okay. Ms. Fromm, I'll count on you to remember to put that in a tickler file or something, so we don't forget it. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion for tonight? If not, I'll take a motion.
So
to adjourn.
moved.
So moved by.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed.